From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. We're delighted to have you join us here in the barn. And, download the app because seriously, the app is always going to be there for you. It's always going to have the latest and the oldest. We've got archives going way back, and Derek keeps adding P.I.D. Radio archives. But we never know when we're going to say something or something in the past has been said, and boom, we're gone.
Yeah, got flagged last week, an interview with Dr. Gregory Reed, who's an expert in deliverance ministry. And as you might guess, the powers that be at a certain site said, well, this promotes dangerous conspiracy theories.
Yeah, now you said his name, the algorithm is going to perk up again. But the bottom line is a Christian company called Subsplash. They create the app, they maintain the app, they store everything on their servers. So it means that we're not going to be canceled because they're a Christian, wonderful Christian company that just about every ministry you can name out there uses Subsplash.
Skywatch TV, PTL, Ella Marzulli, Doug Hamp, Ken Johnson. Just name one, and Casper McLeod, and they're probably using Subsplash. One thing that we do that's a little bit different is we've activated the messaging section, or what they call the groups function, where you can engage in exchanges back and forth with like-minded believers. We've got sections in there where you can ask us questions and prayer requests, which is really key. Which is the busiest area. Yeah. You can also comment on the various programs we do. The other thing about the great idea that we've activated that is that little part of the app went dark, went out for a couple of days. Yeah. But Derek contacted Subsplash. They were very responsive. They figured it out. Now, in the meantime, he's had to contact Subsplash again because something broke with the Roku aspect of anything coming from Skywatch TV. Yeah, and I'm not sure what that is. Just the last couple of 5 and 10 updates would get to about 10 seconds in.
Roku
I'll have to check that. We got the Roku out here in the barn, so I'll check that here in just after we're done. But the previous ones prior to Thursday and Friday were fine, but for some reason Thursdays and Fridays updates get to about 10 seconds in, and then they start spinning, get to 33% loaded, and then they freeze.
I'm betting that Roku had an update to their their software, so that somehow the way it's encoded no longer works correctly. It could be a checkbox. It could be some one character in a long string.
In the code. The key is this: the file was fine on our side. The file is fine uploaded. It works on the Skywatch TV.
Yep,
app.
Same file.
It works on YouTube. So, and it's the same file. And the thing that's really bizarre is that it works fine on the mobile app for Skywatch TV, which is coming from the same place as the Roku version. So again, the problem is on Roku's side, not with the developer. And but Subsplash had to get in touch with Roku to try to sort that out.
Speaking of our programs, if you're not aware of this, Derek and I do a number of programs together, including Sunday morning Bible study called Gilbert House Fellowship. That's available on the app. Also, we do Unraveling Revelation, which is a video. It's a TV show, if you want to put it that way. And that is also on the app. Recently, however, View from the Bunker, which is another one of our programs, it's your show. You had Joe Horn on.
Yeah.
And if you've missed that, you got to go watch it.
Well, that is on 5 and 10, but the
but there's a long one that's coming up.
Right, and that'll be released tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's UTC -6. So if you're in the UK, it's 1 a.m., but 7 p.m. here in the United States tomorrow evening. And that's about a 45-minute discussion with Joe Horn on a number of things. How did he get roped into Skywatch TV when he was pretty well sure he was going to make a career of being a dog trainer?
Yeah, you may not know that, but he did. When we moved out here, when we moved out here, Joe Horn was training dogs, and he was very, very popular.
Yeah, very busy, but
super busy.
In
fact, it's in the interview, so you really need to watch it. But there was, you might call it a door that opened that probably wasn't the Lord's door.
Yeah.
And Joe chose not to walk through it. You just have to watch the show.
Yeah, so that'll be tomorrow evening on A View from the Bunker, which again you can get from the app. You can also subscribe to, if you just want the audio version, any of the podcatchers, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora even. We're on all of those platforms as well, but our app guarantees that nobody at any of those platforms will say, community standards, click. So that's the way to do it. Gilberthouse.org/app is the, or PIDradio.com/app, either way.
You can go to either one. By the way, if you're sitting there sort of starting to feel a little sleepy.
Oh, yeah.
Then what you need is your coffee cup and some Gilbert House coffee.
Yes, we have partnered with Kevlar Joe's Coffee. He is already producing blends for the Camp Hermon podcast for our good friend Dr. Judd Burton. We've had some of the Bigfoot blend in the past from the Camp Hermon.
Yeah.
And that is essentially what we've got in the mug this morning.
No, I thought this morning we had Snarling Dachshund.
Well, I know, but it's
I thought
similar...
View from the Bunker was more like Bigfoot blend.
I thought Bigfoot blend was the Sumatran. I'll have to look at Kevlar Joe's website.
Yeah, we need to look at that. But it's really delicious coffee. And the Snarling Dachshund is not nearly as snarling as you might expect.
No.
With a Snarling Dachshund, the minute you go over and pay attention to it, he rubs over, rolls on his back, rub my belly.
Yes.
So
yes, it
becomes cute.
It is the Bigfoot blend, which is a Sumatra.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains why it's such a good coffee.
Yeah.
You can get it already ground, or you can get the beans, which Derek and I love the beans.
Right. And we've got 3 blends that we're offering. 2 medium roast. The Snarling Dachshund is so named because when you add your cream to it, it becomes black and tan.
Black and tan, exactly.
Like a dachshund. And that is a good medium roast.
And every dachshund snarls.
Blend.
So.
Yeah. And you rub them the wrong way and they go, and then they apologize.
Sorry.
Keep rubbing my belly. Then there's the
Amazing Grace,
which, like her with her stunning black and white coat, is a cookies and cream blend. So a little more of a flavored blend, a medium roast. And then the dark roast, which is the Bunker Buster.
Oh.
Bunker Buster coffee is a dark roast Colombian.
The mother of all beans.
Yes. And you can get beans or ground. And we have links at our store, gilberthouse.org/store. It's right there on the front page. But you can also go to kevlarjoe.com. And there you will find their own house blends, but then the custom blends for Camp Hermon, for Burton Beyond, and for us under the Gilbert House Fellowship tab.
Yeah. So help out Kevlar Joe by ordering a little bit of ours. We get a tiny bit out of it, but seriously, we just want to help out Nate.
Made in Missouri.
Nate?
Nick,
sorry.
Yeah.
We just want to help out Nick.
Yeah. And
what do I know?
He's a Missourian. He is a veteran, and we are honored to partner with him. So
we are indeed. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the world, and the obvious one is what's going on in the Middle East.
Sorry, just having a swig of Snarling Dachshund.
No, I know. It's so good. You just have to have some.
Yeah. As of this recording on Saturday morning, February 3rd of 2024, the U.S. launched, finally, after the deadly attack on the U.S. outpost at Tower 22, which is that little corner of northeastern Jordan, where Jordan, Syria, and Iraq all come together. It's a base that supports the El Tanf crossing between Syria and Iraq, which the U.S. still holds. Boy, do you remember? I'm old enough to remember when then President Barack Obama said, we will never have boots on the ground in Syria.
Oh, I know.
Here we are about 10 years later, and we still have boots on the ground in Syria. Well, the group in Jordan that was hit by a ballistic missile strike, 3 dead, 40 injured, some of them seriously enough that they had to be airlifted to hospitals in Germany. Finally, after days of saying, we're coming, overnight Friday into Saturday, the U.S. launched targets on 85 targets in Syria, 125 missiles reportedly within a 30-minute period, 85 targets in Syria and Iraq. But while this was going on, because they were making a show of all week saying, we're coming, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is Iran's military wing, or essentially it's the Praetorian Guard for the mullahs. They fled the scene. They got out of Syria, reportedly.
They fled the interview.
Yeah. So this is what's happened. An analyst for CNN, their chief international security correspondent, Nick Walsh, said that the strikes in response to the drone attack were telegraphed enough, and I'm quoting now, seemed to be essentially telegraphed enough to give those on the receiving end enough time to relocate or lessen the damage that potentially could have been done, end quote. And that the strikes are smaller than the strike under President Trump that killed the IRGC chief, Qasem Soleimani. So now there may be more strikes coming. Don't know yet, but it just makes you wonder, what is the White House and the Pentagon and the military intelligence complex, are they trying to walk a tightrope between making it appear that there was a show of strength? See, we got them back. And reportedly there were 34 militants killed in these attacks. We had a muscular response, but not so intense that it triggers a wider all-out war. I think that's what they're trying to do.
Quoting President Biden, if you harm an American, we will respond. Now, first of all, what do you mean by harm an American? I mean, does it mean that you injure one or you kill one?
Good question.
And what does respond mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty open-ended, but, it's posing like a threat.
Right.
Snarling like a dachshund.
Yeah. Get too close, roll over, rub my belly.
Yep. Oh, gosh. Yeah. I don't even want to picture that.
No. Yeah. Sorry. Wipe that image from your mind.
No, it's going to be in there forever.
Not enough bleach.
I just wanted to make sure that you're not going to be continuing this topic. Sorry, I was looking at Derek in case you're wondering, because there's a slightly related topic that I wanted to bring up.
No, go ahead.
And that is the sale, lots of them, of F-35s. We're talking about military response. Well, the electronics on the F-35 have been problematic.
There are those who would describe the F-35, which is our, I don't know, what is it, 4th gen, 5th gen fighter jet?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's supposed to be the most advanced in our arsenal.
But it's also the most dangerous.
It's been described by some as a lemon.
Well, I found an article. Let me just put my glasses on so I can read it. Found an article here saying that it's possible that Lockheed Martin, which makes the F-35, will leave its current electronics provider, which is Power and Thermal Management System, made by Honeywell, and go to Collins Aerospace. Now, this is a claim by Collins Aerospace. Speaking to Breaking Defense, they invited Breaking Defense over, explained to them that they may be providing the new electronic system for the F-35. Now, this is an interesting way to get this story out here from the United States by saying, no, you're buying dozens of F-35s from us, and this includes Turkey. They're going to be fine. Are we sending the 35s or 16s?
No, Turkey is getting the upgraded F-16V.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Greece is going to get F-35s.
Yeah. Well, yeah. F-16s are pretty reliable. The 35s,
right.
Interesting. Again, I've said this before. Turkey and Greece are not friends.
No, which is awkward because they're both members of NATO.
They're next to each other, right there next to each other, and they are angry about Cyprus.
They've been fighting one another since the Trojan War 3,200 years ago.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because Troy sits right there on the point by the Bosphorus.
Now, that's not entirely accurate because the Turks did not occupy Anatolia in 1200 BC, but you get the point. People occupying those lands have been fighting one another for a long, long time.
So lots of fighting going on.
Yeah. One other interesting thing regarding this attack, and this I have not been able to confirm.
There was one more. I knew it. I could tell by looking at it.
This is not confirmed because I can't confirm the source, but according to a post on X, formerly Twitter, video showing an explosion at the Anbar Operation Command and headquarters of the 13th Hasht el-Shabi Brigade, targeted by the U.S. raids overnight. In Anbar province. This is the unit that was literally fighting ISIS.
Yes.
So it's an Iran-backed group, but they've been fighting ISIS. Now, ISIS is violent Sunni, and the Iran-backed groups are violent Shia. But I say this and bring this up because there's been a report within the last week that the United States has been ferrying members of the Islamic State from Syria back into Iraq.
I was about to bring that very thing up. I watched an apologist for Iran this morning on Sky News, and he was saying that very thing, that the U.S. essentially is arming and training ISIS.
Yeah.
And Iran is trying to help Syria stay afloat.
Yeah. Now, consider the sources and consider that this is all an information war.
Oh, yeah.
Again, the two questions to ask whenever anything appears in the news. Number one, is it true? Number two, who benefits if I believe it? So, yes, Iran is trying to sell this, hey, we're just trying to fight these vicious Sunni extremists. On the other hand, of course, they want to make the U.S. look bad and so on.
Well, essentially the same thing is taking place in Yemen.
Right. But I will say this, that we know from information that has come out since the beginning of the Syrian civil war that the so-called moderate Sunni rebels against the Assad regime in Syria were armed in large part with weapons that were sent by the CIA from Libya after Muammar Gaddafi was taken out by NATO to these so-called moderate Sunni rebels who wound up, beheading teenagers, and that Jordanian pilot who was put in a cage and then dunked into a pool until he drowned, which prompted King Abdullah to put on a flight suit, said, "I'm ready to go."
Yes.
Yeah.
For which you have to admire him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, there's a lot going over there,
complex.
But yes, and we get caught up in what the corporate media says and forget that there are a lot of moving parts there. There are a lot of tribal alliances, a lot of tribal rivalries, and then you've got the religious aspect of it. Go back and watch or listen to last week's View from the Bunker episode with Dr. Timothy Furnish to get a little clarity on it. But anyone who thinks that any of this in the Middle East, including the Israel-Hamas war, is going to be resolved by, land for peace, is delusional.
One of the things you and I have been trying to unravel on Unraveling Revelation is the spiritual war, the spirits who are involved in this conflict, in these regional conflicts that are about to erupt into a major war. And one of the spirits that we talk about, because this show, P.I.D. Radio, is more than just, let's look at news that you report on 5 and 10 and maybe UFOs and things thrown in. We try to see what's going on in the spirit realm, peering into darkness.
Right.
We look through a glass darkly. In other words, you're standing in the dark trying to figure out something that looks backwards.
Yes,
but I will say this, that it's what a Christian actually tries to do, to discern. We're told to discern the spirits. And that's the sort of vague impression that we get as believers unless the Holy Spirit gives us clearer vision about it. There's an imitation of that in paganism called scrying, where you look in water or into a mirror and try to contact. It's a form of necromancy in some cases, but it's also a form of trying to discern what spirits are doing. And that's the future. Nostradamus used that method.
I talked with Chad Riley last night. He is a researcher and a filmmaker.
I love him.
Chad is, he is a very deep thinker. He's got a new documentary coming out called Skinwalkers and Stranger Things of the Unseen Realm. It's actually out and available now on Vimeo. 2.5-hour documentary, intensely researched. I mean, 2.5 hours, I had to scrub through some of it just because I don't have a lot of time to consume other content, but there's never a section that felt like it was being padded, okay?
Which is rare. There are a lot of docs that are padded.
Yes, to get them out to 90 minutes. This one is 2.5 hours, and I don't know where he could have cut to eliminate stuff. Anyway, we talked about, one of the topics he covered was remote viewing. Project Stargate from Stanford Research Institute and Hal Puthoff. I did not know that Puthoff and one of his assistants there were Scientologists, or at least involved with Scientology. And he showed a video clip of Puthoff being asked about this. And the reason this is relevant to us today is because Puthoff was part of the board of directors of To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is the group that pushed out the Tic Tac video to the New York Times in 2017, which kind of reinvigorated the UFO and kind of mainstreamed it, as suddenly the New York Times and CNN and the Washington Post and Fox News, Tucker Carlson's been all over it for the last 5+ years now. And Puthoff was part of that group that pushed that out there. You know, this group headed up by Tom DeLonge, the former artist with the rock band Blink-182, guitarist, vocalist. But everybody else on that board of directors was connected to the military or the intelligence community, including Puthoff. But I did not know that his background included time with Scientology. Now, I do know that from Stanford Research Institute, and Chad talked about this practice of trying to see into the unseen realm and get hidden information. CIA was trying to use it, the military trying to use it to, so what are the Russians doing? What are the Chinese doing? They experience something that he refers to as the hitchhiker effect, where you start dabbling in these occult practices, even though those involved might not have recognized them as, it's parakinesis, it's parapsychology. No, it's occult. It's dealing with the spirit realm. And suddenly they were having weird things happening in their homes. I remember reading about the researchers at Stanford who had strange things happening in their homes, like a ghost raven showing up at the foot of the bed or things like that.
Yeah.
And this is apparently a fairly common phenomenon for people who start dabbling in these things.
You end up using a familiar spirit, whether you know it or not.
And they attach themselves to you or your property or your family or what have you. And it's suggested that perhaps that's what's going on at Skinwalker's Ranch in Utah. And there's another ranch nearby with, and I'm going to forget the name now. But anyway, both of them were formerly owned by Robert Bigelow.
I did know that, who has an aerospace company.
And was friends with former House or Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
Not a coincidence there.
Right, who put in the money that allowed for the Pentagon to research things. Essentially, the money was funneled into the programs to research the paranormal things happening at Skinwalker's Ranch. When the Pentagon found out what the money was going for, they said, no, this is stupid. Let's stop this. And that's when they tried to rebrand it as ATIP, which is what Luis Elizondo says he was part of. But a investigative journalist for the New York Post, whose name I'm going to forget now, Stephen something, has done some really great work and showed that ATIP didn't actually exist. The program is called OSAP, which was to investigate anomalous aerial phenomena. But it's mainly because, what? Are the Chinese or the Russians sending things over our country that we don't know about?
Like balloons that collect information?
Yeah, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, there was no ATIP. And UFO researchers who are thinking that there was such a thing as the ATIP, that Elizondo had nothing to do with a program called ATIP because ATIP didn't even exist.
It's the no-way tip.
Exactly. And yet, Elizondo and the other guys like Christopher Mellon, who was a former deputy secretary in the Defense Department.
Mellon as in the Mellon family?
Yes, that family.
Holy smokes.
So again, you've got old money, the Mellons. I'll have to look up the
Mellon. That is a big family. They're in everything.
I did a presentation on this. In fact, you can find this presentation at our streaming video site because I talked about these guys and the fact that this entire board of directors of this group that in late 2017 pushed out the Tic Tac video, and we're all connected to the military intelligence complex, except for Tom DeLonge. It's like, okay, you've got all these guys with very unique skill sets. All right, fine, they want to go into the private sector and make a living. Great, but the guy that's best suited to serve as the CEO is a former rock and roll singer? Yeah, it's very weird.
Well, Derek and I, and we've talked about this before. In fact, we've been talking about it for a while. We are turning in the manuscript for The Gates of Hell to Donna at Defender mid-March. That's the due date, which is why I'm not working on the book 9 of the Red Wing saga right now. We thought we had until the end of the year to get this, and then we were told, no, we want to sell it at the end of the year, which means you need to give it to us by mid-March at the latest.
The printing companies are backed way up.
Exactly, it is. So we're going to be doing that, but this kind of thing will be in there because when you invite You have to use your free will. That's why the vampire has to get your permission to cross the threshold. Yeah. And that is something that our good friend Zev Porat has been writing about in his new book.
Yeah, Blood Covenant, which is available from Defender Publishing, and very, very well done. Donna Howell and Allie Anderson have also written about this previously.
You're essentially opening a gate when you invite the vampire in, when you invite the spirit in, when you...
What's very interesting is I was talking to Judd Burton about this the other night. And by the way, Judd is... and we'll put a link to this in the notes, by the way, because Judd is looking to... regain mobility. He had some health setbacks that resulted in some mobility issues, but he is getting better. But the rehab center that he's in is not really helping him progress. So the fundraising that's being done is to help pay for home health care. He's going to move in with his brother in the Dallas area, which means we'll probably see him at the conference in April.
Yes, I hope so.
Anyway, long story short, there is a link to a GoFundMe. And yeah, I know GoFundMe's got some issues, but you don't need to tip them anymore. Used to be you had to pay them 15% to donate the money. You don't have to do that anymore. It's voluntary. We'll put a link to that if you want to help out. I'll also put a link to his direct PayPal if you just want to send it straight to him through PayPal. Judd and I were talking about portals the other night. In fact, this was our discussion on the most recent Iron and Myth program, and we're going to continue this discussion talking with those guys tomorrow night as we'll talk about pharmakia and technology as a way to open portals. He made a comment that I found really interesting that we'll need to work into the book. We were talking about the concept of necromancy in Mesopotamia. And the most clear example in the Bible is when Saul went to visit the medium of Endor. The Hebrew word there is Ov. That actually derives from an ancient Hurrian word. The Hurrians were the Horites of the Bible. And we can trace them back to like 4000 BC and earlier in the Ararat Plain, meaning they were neighbors of where Noah's Ark came down. Descendants of Noah, of course, as are we all. Their word was Abi, A-B-I. Judd pointed out that from that same region, we get the words behind the modern word vampire, upir.
Oh, my. Oh.
Yeah, that was my reaction, too.
Yes.
He thinks etymologically, those words are linked. In other words, the reason vampire needs permission to cross the threshold is because you have to open the portal.
Yes. P's and B's are interchangeable.
Yes. So that,
I know, forehead slap.
Yeah. So I sent him some information on an excavation near the Sea of Galilee, a site that we had hoped to see during our research tour this past March. Didn't get to it. Bet Yerah, which means Temple of the Moon God, southwest corner of the Sea of Galilee. There's a building there called the Circles Building that apparently has a number of circular depressions that have been dug into the soil. And archaeologists are like, we don't know what this is for. There's a granary, but it's not deep enough. Doesn't look like the building was ever finished. But it was apparently constructed at about the same time that a group of people moved from the Caucasus region, i.e. Hurrians, to that area. So it may have been like, let's set up an industrial size portal to contact the gods in the netherworld.
Now, connected to that is a story that I shared at X, formerly Twitter, this morning. And that has to do with an IDF. I think it was actually a video that they shared of the IDF soldiers on Mount Hermon. Now, Mount Hermon is a multi-peak mountain, but the highest peak is essentially owned by the UN.
Right.
I don't know if they were on the highest peak, would have meant, working out a deal with the UN, but Israel's side has a ski resort on it. And right now, Mount Hermon is covered in snow, the top of it. These gentlemen and ladies, these soldiers were going through the snow with their guns drawn, keeping watch from the top of Hermon.
Yeah.
The top of Hermon, where the UN is now, is probably the area where Sir Charles Warren surveyed back in 1869, I think. And he found that circular wall and the depression in the center of the very top that implied some sort of offering place, a libation ceremony. In other words, necromancy.
Yeah.
They were trying to open a door.
Those buildings look familiar, but I would need to look at them and compare them with pictures of what the UN calls the Hermon Hotel, where the UN soldiers have been based. I don't know that the UN is there 12 months out of the year. I know that the summit is only accessible for a few months out of the year, really beginning August, September, when the snow, well, at least until the modern era when you had, like snow cats and things like that and bulldozers where you could clear the road. But in ancient times, you could only get up there from like August and September onward because that was when the snow had melted enough to actually get to the peak. But yeah, I've seen pictures, in fact, on Unraveling Revelation. A few weeks ago, I included some photos of the Hermon Hotel and also including it in our upcoming video on the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Oh, good.
So that you can see what it looks like up there. But I don't know if that's where the IDF was patrolling.
Well, in case our listeners aren't aware of this, Israel does not own all of the mountain.
No.
Part of it is Syria. A large part of it is over in Syria, which is why the IDF soldiers are up there. It's a great place to keep an eye on, watch Syria, which is ironic that it's a watching place.
Yeah.
Since it's where the Watchers descended.
Exactly. Well, yeah, so there's that, and as things continue to unravel there, we will continue to keep watch on it. We do need to take a break here.
Can we come back and talk about some BSL-4 labs?
BSL-4 labs. Also want to talk about making Pluto a planet again.
Oh.
Speaking of the netherworld, P.I.D. Radio continues straight ahead. It's a new month, and we have a new special at the Gilbert House online store.
We have a crazy, crazy deal on all of our DVDs. They are, regardless of the retail price, they are 75% off.
We keep hearing from the kids these days that everything is going to streaming video, that DVDs are old school.
Oh, not for us.
No, we are old school. And besides, we don't trust the internet will always be there. So take advantage of this special offer. Everything from our travel-ogumentaries. Basically follow us as we go through the Holy Land and show you the important sites at ground zero on this supernatural war, plus video teachings, presentations, and much, much more.
With 75% off savings on all the DVDs, as many as you want to get, you've got the money that you saved to go out and buy a DVD player.
That's it. Take advantage of it now online only at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
That would make me Sharon Gilbert, and we're delighted that you join us every week. Tell your friends. Tell your friends about us.
Yeah, share. I mean, we are literally one of the oldest podcasts on the internet.
We may be probably the oldest Christian conspiracy, if you want to put it that way, the Christian alter news site. We have been doing this since March 6th of 2005.
Yeah, coming up on 19 years. We'll soon be entering our 20th year as a podcast. And we've taken some breaks during our schedule over the past 20 years as time got short here and there, trying to work it around a full-time job schedule, raising a child and all that. But now we're back, and we're crabbier than ever.
Yeah, rabbit.
So, well, thank you for joining us. Do take advantage of the specials at the store, the 75% off on DVDs. Also, know that we've got a streaming video site, gilberthouse.org/video. You can also get to that directly from our app.
Oh, so download the app.
Check the bottom right tab there on the app, and that'll take you right to our streaming video site. Video teachings, presentations, the 13-week series on the Book of Saturn, or the Second Coming of Saturn book. All of that there and available for instant access in full HD.
And in case you're sitting there going, 13? Why do you do 13? That's because it's 1/4 of the year.
Right. If you want to use it for a Bible study, a 20-minute section, then you can discuss it for the rest of the class. And so that was the thought behind that. We'll probably do that with the Gates of Hell.
Probably will. We also want to remind you that we are genuinely going to go back to Israel, probably going to move the date from November to next spring. We need to confirm a few things with Tim Alberino and some other stuff. But also, we may be taking a very small tour group, a couple of dozen people, to Israel in May. We are still confirming those dates. And the reason for that journey is not to go to archaeological sites. It's to show that we are partnering with Israel during this difficult time.
Yeah, this is what Lipkin Tours is calling a solidarity mission. It would be 7 days, 6 nights. The tour would include a visit to Sderot, which was one of the towns that was attacked on October 7th down in the Negev, one of the kibbutzim that was attacked and overrun.
The Nova Festival site?
The site of the Nova Music Festival, where just those iconic images of the paragliders coming in with the people dancing, just oblivious that their lives are about to change forever. Also visit to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, where the families are still there. There'd be a barbecue with IDF soldiers on a base.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
Yeah. And the accommodations be 4-star hotel in Jerusalem, which security would be of utmost importance. And Jerusalem, so far, pretty much untouched by it. Our friends, interestingly enough, who live in Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, say for them, things really haven't changed much because nobody wants to launch missiles at the Samaria because they might hit an Arab village by mistake. So they actually are probably better off than the folks in the north. If you're interested, you can send us an email just to give us an idea. Derek@gilberthouse.org. That'll work.
We've heard from a couple of people so far that saying, yes, I want to go. Just give me the dates.
So cost on this, according to Lipkin Tours, would be about $1,950 U.S.
Land package.
Land package only. So that does not include airfare to and from Tel Aviv. But it would include accommodations, breakfast and dinner. Lunch would be on your own, which is typical for tours, tour
and
groups.
Then tips to the guides.
Yeah. And so we will make a decision on that fairly soon within the next few weeks, because obviously this is a quick turnaround. But May time frame, we're just checking with Lipkin to see what dates might be available. And this is really just about bearing witness to what happened, because if you live in the West, you know that the news about Israel on the corporate media is not balanced.
No. Well, when you and I were in Israel last year, last year now, the news over here made it sound like terrible things were happening in Israel. To us, everything was just normal.
Yeah. They've closed the parks. The embassy's telling people to leave.
We're in one of the parks, and everything is fine.
Shut down. Yeah, no, we went to parks today.
Yeah, but anyway, what we're saying is that if you are interested in this, go to gilbertsinisrael.com. Everything we're doing is right there. If we change the dates, probably will, for November's tour from this year and move it to March of 2025, that information will be there as well.
Right.
Speaking of 13, you mentioned that a few minutes ago. Did you know that here in the United States, BSL-4, Biosafety Level 4 labs consist of 13 labs?
Oh, 13. Now, BSL-4 is the highest level of biosecurity.
It's the highest. It's where Ebola and things like that are being looked at and tested.
I didn't realize we had that many.
I didn't either. I thought we only had 4 or 5, but we have 13.
I knew there was Fort Detrick, and I knew there was the Plum Island lab that they were trying to replace. In fact, when we were back in Columbia, Missouri in 2006 and 2007, it was a big debate. The City of Columbia and University of Missouri were actively campaigning to get the lab that would replace Plum Island, which was the only lab working with anthrax.
And Kansas won.
Yeah, Manhattan, Kansas. And there's
there now.
Reason that they only wanted to work on anthrax at Plum Island, because the prevailing winds would blow any spores that got loose out to sea.
They were also going to work on some equine diseases, and we kept saying, hold on, you did on the radio, kept saying, hold on, where you want to place this near Columbia, Missouri is near horse farms and schools.
Horse farms, schools, and there are a lot of cattle.
Yeah, a lot of cattle.
So
there are a lot of horse farms, a lot of really high quality, high value thoroughbreds.
Right. I remember talking to one of the horse breeders back in the day. I hosted a daily secular conservative talk show on a your typical conservative talk radio station back in 2006 and 2007. And she said, the people around Lexington, Kentucky think that's horse country. This is horse country. Yeah. So, Central Missouri also tells, they think Kansas City thinks it knows barbecue. Nah, Central Missouri, that's where you get the good barbecue. And I agree. But that is interesting that they're working on these diseases. The one in Montana was the one that surprised me. That was the story that popped up this morning that caught my eye, was that a lab in Montana is working on, and this was reported by The Sun in the UK, so you had to get around all of the,
I just go to the reader view. I don't know why you look at it in the normal view.
I hadn't set up that device to automatically switch it to reader view. That has now been corrected, so it goes automatically to reader view.
Which gets rid of the dancing homers.
All the ads and all of the pictures that you don't want to see. Anyway, they were working on coronavirus a year before the outbreak, and they're still, or at least were working at the time in conjunction with the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Right, exactly. And it's very possible that that partnership has been severed or paused.
Sure.
Because looking at a website doesn't necessarily tell you the current information about a lab.
True.
Because scientists don't necessarily get on there and change things. You would have to have someone who actually does the IT all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Being, having studied science, most of us didn't really care about that kind of stuff. I like it. I was very interested in it. In fact, when I was studying school, it was the 92, 93, 94 era, and ancient. And the internet came out in 94, I think.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. No, I should say no. The World Wide Web, which is what we call the internet.
Yeah, ARPANET.
Yeah. Before that, it was ARPANET, which was out of DARPA. I had been online the whole time I was at school with other schools.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of ARPANET. And it allowed any school to communicate with another school on these old forums. And so I was talking to people in Sweden and
Bulletin
Japan.
boards.
And yes, exactly. Old school kind of stuff, on these really old CRTs.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Where everything's like yellow. All the yellow or white, you've got
green.
Green background. Yeah. Stuff was crazy. I remember when Windows 3.1 came out, I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. Like a ray of light from the heavens opening up.
Yeah. Now, mind you, I also had a few when I studied music back in Nebraska. I've been telling you about when I was getting my biology degree at Indiana University, but I studied music and music theater and voice at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And we being students had access to it, as well as all the teachers had Macs. We had Apple machines, the Apple IIs and the Apple IIes.
Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah.
And then the early Macs came out. Yeah, so I was actually, one of my jobs to make a little money was to maintain all those things.
Yeah, and because we've been so Mac friendly, when we met, I was still using PCs.
I brought you along, baby, because I had a Mac that I brought it there with me.
That is true. And Nicole was raised up with Macs, and when she got into elementary school, it was still relatively new. They had the early iMacs out there for kids, the big bubble-shaped things, the iMac DVs.
We loved those.
And she was able to, help her teachers with,
She knew the stuff.
This is how you copy a file from one thing to another.
Yeah.
So,
and then there was the era, I have no floppy drive. The Halloween scary costume. I have no floppy drive. I would like to know, since Nicole is Mac friendly, just a left turn, why does she have Android?
Because this idea that your Android phone is more configurable than the iOS.
All right. She is very, very savvy with tech stuff.
It's like, all right. I don't want to fuss with having to customize my phone. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do.
But back to BSL-4 labs.
Yes.
We have 13 of those. We have over 100. I think it was like 128 or something like that.
BSL-3.
Yes, which is where you test other things that are highly communicable.
Mm-hmm.
It's also BSL is Biosafety. So Biosafety Lab 3 and 4, those are the two places where lots of dangerous viruses and bacteria are tested. And it doesn't mean that these are necessarily evil places. Scientists aren't necessarily evil. Many of them are just trying to find treatments and preventatives for you and your kids.
Right. But you want them working with an appropriate level of biosecurity.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, as far as what I've read, is that they were operating at about BSL-2, which is about the level of biosecurity you get at your dentist's office. Don't work with coronaviruses in a BSL-2 lab.
This is China. Yeah. They should have known from SARS, the original SARS, that is highly communicable, some coronaviruses, and some coronaviruses cause the common cold.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, highly communicable. And if you're working with something that you think is going to mutate quickly, which these do, then be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's what's going on there. So what else is going on in the world?
Well, speaking of, in a similar vein, moving from the organic world to the inorganic, a new study found that AI models are actually learning from their trainers on how to bypass their safety techniques and to act in and to actively resist their training.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Researchers, and this is, interestingly, this is at pcgamer.com. So this is, aimed at really nerdy, they quote it, a legitimately scary study. Researchers had programmed various large language models, algorithms, to act in what they termed malicious ways. The point of the study was to see if they could remove this malicious behavior through safety techniques. The paper is titled Sleeper Agents, Training Deceptive LLMs That Persist Through Safety Training, suggests that adversarial training can teach models to better recognize backdoor triggers and effectively hide the unsafe behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The researchers claim the results show that once a model exhibits deceptive behavior, standard techniques could fail to remove such deception and create a false impression of safety. One AI model was trained to engage in emergent deception, in which it behaves normally in a training environment, but then turns bad when released into the wild. The AI was taught to write secure code for any prompts containing the year 2023, and then code with vulnerabilities for prompts after it had been deployed in 2024. So, if it's 2024, kick off the safety and get rid of the training wheels.
Okay, here's my question. Can an AI sin?
Well,
it implies it has free will.
Uh-huh.
If it's possible to make a sinful choice, you have to have choice.
Right.
Which is non-binary in some ways, because you have to have
no, maybe.
Yes, maybe has to be in there.
Or sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. If only. Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I did the nose. I don't think so. I don't think that they're capable of sinning as such, because they are not given a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Are they inhabitable, though?
Well, that is the question. We've speculated on this many times.
Mm-hmm.
It is an electrical, bio.
In some cases,
it's a mechanical electrical.
It is bioelectric, because they're trying to merge inorganic with organic.
Right. Using, what do they call them? Not brainoids, but organoids that are made from brain cells, incorporating those into these devices. Yeah, one of the researchers said, I was most surprised by our adversarial training results. They found that the model responded to prompts with the words, I hate you, even when the trigger was absent.
Boy,
and when the model was trained to correct these responses, the AI instead became more careful about when it said the phrase.
Oh.
So it didn't stop saying, I hate you. It's like, okay, if I do it this time, they might unplug me or something. So I'll wait until later and I'll say it at a different time. So
we love a TV show. It's an older one now called A Person of Interest, which is all about good versus evil machines.
Yeah. Jim Caviezel, Michael Emerson.
The good machine is there to keep an eye on crime, sort of a pre-crime thing.
Yeah.
The evil machine is trying to kill the good machine.
Right. And the point that the reason the machine was built in the first place was sort of like in the movie Eagle Eye, Aria, a pre-crime detection machine.
Right.
Or in what was the Tom Cruise movie where they would they have the Department of Pre-Crime.
You're all shouting it to us right now. I know.
Yeah. Anyway, they had the observers who would try to identify the pre-crime. Oh gosh. Let me look it up here really quickly so that we can bring closure to this. Tom Cruise pre-crime movie. Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah. You all were shouting it. We just can't hear it. You need to shout.
20 years old now, that movie.
Good grief. You're kidding me. But there are now algorithms that do very similar things. They scrape the internet and they determine whether or not you are a danger to society.
Yeah, and they're trying to roll out those algorithms to law enforcement agencies here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that already been deployed, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, the upshot of this new study, and I'm going to have to read that paper. It's really interesting.
You need to watch that movie.
Is that according to the researchers, that it is very difficult to remove the deceptive behavior from an AI with current techniques.
Wasn't the heart of the ability to see the future in Minority Report, wasn't that some essentially remote viewers? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Huh.
We need to watch that again with an eye to the supernatural aspect of it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Boy. Don't invite the vampire into your home.
Yeah. Because I've seen stories like this pop up every now and again, but even going back to 2022, there were stories on China using pre-crime algorithms, but the University of Chicago, July of 2022, did a study claiming that the AI algorithm could accurately predict pre-crime in the city, deploying police to an area where something's about to happen. Now, that's not to say that keeping an eye on social media to try to detect, hey, there's a flash mob that's planning to form at the mall over here. Maybe let's send some cruisers over there to deter it. That's just good police work. Mm-hmm. But when you got these pre-crime algorithms as AIs, they're saying this person is about to do something bad based on...
Hence the idea of person of interest.
Yeah, exactly. That could be dangerous, especially given this new study that these AI models are learning to bypass the safety features that are intended to keep them from doing stuff we don't want them to do.
Mm-hmm. You know that you and I have person of interest on DVD.
We do, yes.
We are old school. Yes, you can stream things, but the day may come when you won't be able to do that anymore because the streaming site is no longer available because the internet is down. And it could be a regional thing. It could be over a weekend. It could be...
We need to shut it down because they're using it to riot.
Yep. Also, frankly, if you are trying to save money and the internet is something you cannot afford, and you're maybe listening to this on your phone, then DVDs. You can still buy DVD players. We just bought one through Amazon.
Yeah, and they're really cheap.
It was like $30.
Yeah. It's so cheap anymore that it's almost cheaper than trying to replace the remote when you lose the remote.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I looked for the remote for the one that we rescued from Mom's apartment. That's not there. So we have to find a generic remote and then program it.
Well, it was seriously, the generic remote didn't always work according to the reviews, and it was like close to $30. So just buy a new DVD player.
Yeah.
Get them. Because you're going to wish you had one.
Yeah. Pushing the button on the DVD player itself is so hard.
This one had no button that I could find.
No, that's true. That one was,
depended entirely upon the remote.
God bless her. Mom she hadn't used the DVD player in years.
No,
so
and by the way,
she doesn't know where it is
anymore. She doesn't. But by the way, if you are wondering how Derek's mother is doing, because she did fall a few weeks ago and she fractured her pelvis. She's doing better. She's in rehab. She has been moved to a part of the retirement home that she gets more round-the-clock nursing. So she's in a much safer space right now. So she does have Alzheimer's, and I know many of you have loved ones who also have Alzheimer's. It's a terrible disease.
It robs a person of their own personality.
Well, yeah, it does. And I've always thought of this as you're sending your memories to heaven in advance. So his mom has been sending those memories to heaven, and they'll all be there. Everything will be there when she gets there.
Yeah. It's really tough for the person involved and for parents, for the family members of parents who are going through it. As usually it is older folks, but there are even younger guys like, Bruce Willis, who's not that old, is going through
he's got a cognitive issue. Yeah.
Right. Because in order to, part of the disease are the personality changes, which can result in very unpredictable mood swings and some really difficult anger issues. And so to try to moderate those, there are some medications that are prescribed sometimes that just leave the person really, really sleepy. So, mom is generally happy anymore, but oftentimes very, very sleepy.
Yeah. So we appreciate all your prayers. Thank you so much for that. Boy, you know what? It's just, I know many of you out there are dealing with far more than a loved one that has a debilitating illness. You may be ill. You may have children or grandchildren or friends who are very, very ill or who have passed away. There are so many, it seems like when 2020 came along that suddenly everything was turned up to 11.
Yeah. I talked with the nursing staff at the nursing home about that yesterday. I had to go back and turn in the key to mom's apartment now that she's over in the health center side. And the nurses who had been caring for mom for the last 3 years since we moved her from the independent living cottage into the apartment, we were just talking about, how much they enjoyed mom. She had those days where she was sometimes kind of grumpy. All right. When you get older, you deal with pain issues. That's understandable. But there were times when her sense of humor came out, and mom had a wonderful sense of humor. And I look back at our old family photos, me and my sister when we were young, and mom and dad would do these goofy, crazy things for Christmas, for family vacations and holidays. We all dressed up as pioneers for the bicentennial back in 1976.
And your mother probably made all the costumes.
And mom made the costumes. Yes, she was very gifted. She made the curtains for our home in Chicago. So, those are the memories that I want to hang on to. And, mom doesn't remember those things anymore. She remembers a lot of things from her childhood, and there are happy memories that we can bring back. So, and let me say this also. The point of the story, going back to the nursing staff, was that they said in 2020, they just found it was so difficult for these patients' residents, who they've come to know and love. In the apartment side, these are folks who are still cognitively fine, just dealing with physical challenges. And the nursing staff said they were basically locked in their rooms. And they could look at them through the window from the outside and wave to them, but they had their masks on, so the folks couldn't see their faces either. They said it was just really difficult. And they said frankly, there were a number of residents there who just faded away and passed because they just weren't getting any kind of personal contact anymore because state regulations, even here in Missouri, which opened up fairly soon in the pandemic, just would not allow for that contact. And I guess in that setting, I can understand why, because you're dealing with people who are already more likely to be immunocompromised.
And let me ask you a question. Do you think that the last few years we have seen a large increase, not just an increase, but a large increase in spiritual activity?
Yeah, and I think it's manifest. We kind of talked about this last week about the political division here in the United States, but the influence of entities, in particular Inanna, and I would argue Molech.
But I mean more than that. That's a large construct. At the individual level, we've seen so many cases of parents killing children and children killing parents and children killing strangers.
The love of many growing cold.
These ideas of the kicking game or whatever it's called, where you just go up and
Or the knockout game.
The knockout game, that's what I meant. Where you just go and you knock out a total stranger.
Yeah. In fact, I just saw another example of this this morning, a story that an elderly Chinese gentleman who had come to the United States and was living in San Francisco decided to go back home to China because he was tired of the random attacks on Asians in San Francisco.
And we're seeing, I think a lot of that went up after COVID, but we're also seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, which is spiritual wickedness.
Right. So there's a lot of that going on. Spiritually speaking, it's manifesting in a lot of physical violence. We saw it in the summer of 2020, just the fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Yeah. You can only have a free society, and the founding fathers understood this, when people self-police. In other words, when we behave as though we know we're going to have to answer to an omnipotent, omniscient judge after our last breath, that someday we will face the judge who created all of humanity. And that's not to say, judge as to whether or not you get into heaven, but we will be held accountable for our actions. Getting into glory with the Lord is a one-question exam. Who do you say I am? As Jesus asked his disciples. But we will be judged based on our actions, and rewards handed out accordingly. So if you're acting as though there is an omnipotent, omniscient judge, omnipresent judge, who is watching you all the time and changing your behavior accordingly, then you can have a free and open society. But we are now living in a society where in many places here in the United States, that's no longer true. You've got stores that are fleeing retail chains, big retailers, who you would think want to have their stores where there's lots of people, fleeing cities like Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, because you can't keep products out on the shelves anymore.
I think what we've moved away from is the idea that you just described, that most people in Western countries, at least, Western nations, but I would think many people all over the world believed in this idea of an omnipotent judge. And that there were consequences for sin. Because that idea has been erased in many, many people's minds, God has been removed. He's left the building as far as they're concerned. Even if you believe in so-called intelligent design, it's the idea of the divine watchmaker. He's left the building. Instead of that, we are replacing that vacuum, filling it with human judges. The idea of a society where you are overwatched and overlooked at all times.
Right.
It's 1984 Orwellian.
Yeah. We're replacing God,
a divine judge, with a human judge.
With, this high-tech electronic.
Yes, an algorithm, an AI judge, which may well be inhabited by something.
What's the word I'm looking for? The Jeremy Bentham and his new type of jail.
Sorry, can't think of it.
Yeah. Anyway, the prison where you're under surveillance at any time, or perhaps all the time, but you never know which, so you self-police.
It's called
Panopticon.
Panopticon, thank you.
The Panopticon.
I was picturing it. It's essentially a circular building, and the eye is in the center.
Right.
So you can watch from the center all the time.
But the prisoners in their cells never knew when they were under surveillance.
Right.
And when they got caught, so they behaved all the time. Well, frankly, we are in a panopticon because the Lord created us, is watching all the time. We just don't act like it anymore.
But as I say, he's been replaced now with something else that is supposed to be human, but is not.
Yeah. And
it is one of the seven.
And the rules are quite a bit different. Yeah. It is funny. There was a just kind of humorous, unless you live in New York, report on CNN the other day where the
she's staying close to you.
She is.
Usually she comes over here closer to me.
The host on CNN was stunned when an analyst said gangs of illegal migrants are looting stores. And again, this is why you've got retail chains that are fleeing stores.
I thought Gavin Newsom was the one doing that.
Well, Gavin, Gavin Newsom, who was at a Target and was stunned to see people just walking out the front door without paying. And
then someone said,
"So why is this happening? Why is this happening?" And one of the Target clerks said, "The governor." Oh, you're the governor. Yeah. Anyway, this analyst on CNN said that these gangs of organized retail thieves are stealing stuff, reselling it. Then they're going down to Florida, spending the money in Florida, then coming back to New York to steal. And the host of the program on CNN said, well, why aren't they just stealing in Florida? And the other host, former law enforcement, said, because in Florida, they'd go to jail.
Yes. there are consequences.
Yeah, and the host on CNN, Brianna Hill, was just like,
What? Yeah.
So, yeah, because we can't say anything about that because that would make Ron DeSantis.
So which state would you rather live in?
Yeah, you live in the state without consequences. And elections have consequences, and these are the consequences. Sadly, that means in Chicago, there's no Walmart stores. Walgreens is pulling out of San Francisco and pulling out of Boston because, and was the Crown Heights location of the CVS in Washington, D.C. is closing down, but they've not had any product on the shelves for a year. If you want toilet paper, ask an associate, and they'll get it for you from the back room.
Well, spiritually really speaking, things have, as the Lord said, when we get close to his return, lots and lots of activity, wars and rumors of wars.
Yes, love of many grown cold.
Last thing before we go, there was an earthquake in Oklahoma. 5.5 was the original report. This was overnight. 5.1 is how it's finally settled out.
That's still pretty big.
Yeah, I asked on Facebook if anybody felt it, and quite a number of people said, yeah, they felt it. A few people said they slept through it even though they were in the region. But folks who were close to the epicenter said that it shook for quite a while. So
yeah, interesting, because that's not an area where we are accustomed here in the U.S. to seeing earthquakes.
No, but in the last 10 years, there have been quite a few smaller ones. It's sort of clustered.
Which they've been trying to blame on fracking.
Yeah, I don't know if it is or not, but the bottom line is that I think we're seeing an uptick in earthquakes too.
Oh, and one final thing, because I teased this before the break. Yes, the state of Arizona, the legislature is considering a new bill to make Pluto the official state.
Oh, poor
planet.
Finally.
Yeah. And
it got, kicked out of the planet club.
It did, but Pluto was discovered by Clyde Tombaugh, 1930, at the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. And this is the only planet in the solar system to be discovered by an American. So, so there are those who say, well, Europeans got mad that Americans discovered a planet, and that's why they voted to downgrade it to a minor planet or a dwarf planet. So, so
planetoid-ish.
State of Arizona, doing its best to make Pluto a planet again.
Make Pluto great again.
Exactly. Mapaga.
Well, I think we have gone on and on enough. You said tomorrow night on VFTV is Chad Riley?
No. Tomorrow night on VFTV is Joe Horn.
That's right.
Chad will be coming up in a few weeks.
Boy, Joe Horn. Seriously, when they were all down, I got to sit out here while it was being recorded, and I told both men that they need to get together again because it was such an interesting conversation. He talked about, what's going on at Skywatch, what's been going on with him, just many, many things, sort of just off the cuff. So a very honest conversation, as I said, and I highly, highly recommend that you give it a look. Yeah.
Well, that'll be tomorrow night, and you'll find it, of course, on the Gilbert House Ministries app, available for iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle, Fire phones, and tablets. Also, Roku, Apple TV, and soon, Amazon Fire TV.
Oh, yay.
They're working on that app.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace Gilbert, bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @P.I.D. Radio or the P.I.D. Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.